Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Imperfect Podcast. I'm your host, Kirsten Pfeiffer, and we are coming back after a bit of a hiatus. I was having a bit of health issues, which we'll get into today, but it's actually perfect because today I have with me Jane Green, who is a health coach. So I feel like it's a very appropriate conversation to be having right now. You know, it was funny, like I had to really listen to my body, and like I was going and not listening to my body. And then I literally got into a car crash and like literally forced me to slow down. So I'm excited to talk. I know that that's something that you really help your clients with, is listening to your body. And Jane is a certified integrative nutrition health coach. Your mission is to help women free themselves in the cycle of control and guilt in their relationship with food, exercise, and self-care, which I love because I feel like it's a never-ending hamster wheel of messaging and do this, do that. And so I'm really excited to dive into all of this with you today. Welcome, Jane.
Yay, I'm so excited to be here. And it's so nice to meet you.
I know. So we were just talking before this. We both went to UCLA, which I didn't even know until now.
It's okay.
I should have put that together because our friend that, our mutual friend that told me about Jane and how amazing she was, we all went to UCLA together. So totally makes sense. Yes. But do you want to tell us a little bit about, I know you were a dancer and that's probably what kind of led you on this journey of really paying attention to your body. But I would love to just kind of hear what led you to want to be a health coach.
Yeah, interesting. So I started dancing when I was 9, but I think that was part of the reason why I always had an issue with food, or part of the reason. And I remember I was a competitive dancer, and right around like 11, 12, started restricting a lot of food, and I would go weekends without eating, especially if it was like a competition weekend. I felt the pressure to be very thin. Yeah. And it wasn't until my early 20s when I started going to therapy that I started to notice how much my emotions were impacting, the way that I was treating my body and the way that I was eating. And I finally got to the root cause of my depression and my anxiety after, several years of really peeling back the onion and healing a lot of wounds, when I realized, I think this is an issue that a lot of women struggle with, or a lot of people just in general. Yeah. And it's not talked about enough. Yeah. And at that point, I was working for a SaaS company, and I was really enjoying it, and I was doing well. But something just felt off to me. Like I felt like I was meant for more, but I didn't know what that was. Yeah. And so I was just randomly on the internet reading blogs, and I saw this blog about an integrative nutrition health school. So I looked at it, and instantly my body had so much energy and I was so excited, and I didn't know what it was. So for like the next week, I continued to do a little bit more research, and I loved it. And so I just signed up. That's amazing. For this 1-year program, and really fell in love with it. And my life changed drastically. And then after I graduated, I was trying to do both health coaching and my full-time job. And I just couldn't do it anymore. So I took the leap of faith and started to do this full time.
That's amazing. And yeah, I totally relate with that of like trying to balance it all. And like, there's the one thing that you really want to do, and then like the other things are kind of like your security safety net. Yes. I felt that way when I was in college. Actually, I was majoring in business economics because I was like, if acting doesn't work out, I'll be on the business side of entertainment. Yeah. And like, I was like, I'm going to give myself 4 years where I'm in college. I was pursuing acting on the side. And I got to this point sophomore year, it was the end of sophomore year, I was studying for like an econometrics final, and like had the biggest audition of my life the next day too. And I was just like, I'm literally living a double life. Like, what do I really want? And acting was the thing that really made me feel alive. Like you said, where like I just lit up, and I was like, I'm actually inhibiting myself for fully going that way by holding on to this other thing that is like giving me some semblance of security. And so then I switched to communications, which was a lot more in line with that. And I enjoyed UCLA a lot more after that point.
Well, good for you, because I think it's so easy to get caught up in what's safe and what's expected. So
Yeah.
the fact that you were able to do that at such a young age is
Well, you
huge.
too. Yeah.
And by the way, I was an econ major for 2 years too.
Oh gosh. So you know.
I know.
I feel like that 2-year mark is really where you separate the boys from the men, so to
You're
speak.
like, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah. But I think, one of the positive things to come out of the last year and a half with COVID and everything was that the things that we thought were safe and secure actually still can be taken away from you. So I think, and I hope that a lot of people in this time were able to like reassess what actually is it that makes them light up and like kind of just go for it, because life is way too short to be doing anything short of like what you really love to do. And It's been amazing to see the impact you've had and just like the little that I've known about you so far. It really seems like you are making that impact. And I know that one of the things that I read on your website, creepily, is like that you like to help teach women to identify their values and choose each day to move forward towards those values. Do you think that came from that place of really discovering like what it was that you cared about after kind of trying to balance those two things?
Yes, 100%. And I think what I'm noticing with myself and even with just the women that I help is there's everybody, to me, I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people are running on autopilot and they're not being very conscious or intentional about how they're spending their time. And so teaching women to really become aware of their thoughts and their emotions and how their body operates. And once you're able to pinpoint what those things are, then you can really start to make some conscious and intentional change with your life, right? And move towards the things that bring you joy, because so many people just go on about their day doing what they think they should be doing or what's expected of them, but it's not really aligned with the life they want to be living. Yeah,
that's so important. And I feel like even it's a constant check-in, because even when you're doing what you love, like for me, this is what I love, but I still get in the grind of like the beginning of this year, I started this podcast. I was recording an episode every single week and I was going, auditioning, all those things. Like it's a lot. And I sometimes would get in the place of like not checking in with like, I'm feeling stressed and burnt out. Why? And then I got into that car accident, which I mentioned, and it literally forced me to stop and listen to my body, because even before the accident, I was having health issues, which like we can talk about. We were talking about this a little bit before, but it was emotional and physical. I was the week before my car accident, I was getting ready to fly home for a funeral. And so like the emotions attached to that, I was preparing the eulogy, like it was a lot. And then I've had chronic stomach issues for years. And I saw a gastroenterologist 3 years ago for it, and he was very dismissive. He was an older guy. Yeah. Basically told me that I just have IBS, that I'm just stressed. He told me, and I quote, just do some yoga and take some peppermint pills. And I was like, okay.
Or they say it's normal because you're a woman.
Right. Yeah. They just try to normalize it and make it seem like, again, and this is why I love that you say you try to help free people from like guilt, is in that he made it seem like it was something that I could control. He was like, you're just too stressed, which is why it's manifesting in that, which is true. I mean, stress does have a huge impact on our bodies, but it's also genetic. I came to find out what it was. I tested positive 3 years later. I had actually asked him at the time to be tested for SIBO, because my general doctor told me to get tested for SIBO. And anyone listening that doesn't know what that is, it sounds really gross, but it stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So basically overgrowth in your stomach that is causing a lot of bloating and pain. And so I asked to get tested for it. He told me, you probably don't have it. It's really expensive. I had just graduated college and I was like trying to figure out how to even pay rent. So as soon as he said the word expensive, I was like, okay, like, yeah, I'll just take my peppermint pills. 3 years later, I went to my doctor still having the problems, because I had gotten to a place of like kind of able to maintain it holistically, like not really knowing what it was. I was kind of just like guessing and checking of like what people say to do when you have stomach pain.
Right.
And then I had COVID in the fall. And that flared up my stomach problems again because it attacks your GI system. So for the last year, I've been having really, really bad stomach pain again. And stress also flares it up. All that to say, got tested finally for SIBO, which, by the way, insurance completely covered. So this guy had me stressed out for no reason. Tested positive for it the same week I got into my car accident. And so my body was already really inflamed from all the stomach problems, got into the accident, got a concussion, just found out I have bulging discs in my neck. So I was having insane headaches, but I didn't know I had a concussion because I didn't hit my head in the accident. Oh, wow. So it was just really bad whiplash. And because the guy hit me at full speed, rear-ended me. I flew home 2 days later for the funeral, which flying is the worst thing to do when you have a concussion. I literally thought I was like dying. I had like vertigo or something. Oh, no. But I had a concussion and I was forcing myself to work out while I was at home, which is also bad for concussions. Again, not listening to my body. And I just was like, I almost wanted to convince myself that I was okay. So I'm like, if I can be fully functional in the things that I usually do, like trying to run this podcast, working hard, writing, working out, then I can convince myself I'm okay.
No.
And then it turns out all along, I had a concussion, was very injured. And so that was a huge lesson for me because I preach this on the podcast, like listen to yourself, be kind to yourself. But sometimes it's like the hardest for us to take our own advice.
It's much easier said than done.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I hope that anyone listening doesn't have to get into a car accident to realize that. But all that to say, I feel like I had been in this place of being really intentional, and you can still like keep going. And if you don't make that conscious like check-in every week, you can get in this rut and pattern of like being on autopilot, like you said.
Totally. And for myself, at least I can say when I first started to do a lot of work on myself, I really thought everything was linear. I was going to do all of this work and then get to a place where I was like fully thriving and totally okay. And it wasn't until, I did start to do a lot of healing that I realized nothing is linear. Everything is cyclical. So you may have days where you are doing really well and then you get back to that place where you aren't listening to yourself. So it is a daily reminder to say, okay, what do I need today and what is true?
Yeah, that's so powerful. And actually I have a mentor that made me think of it in that way because I forget what it was, but I was talking to her about something like, I really feel like I overcame this thing and now I feel like I'm like back in that same spot and I feel like I've regressed almost. And she said, Kirsten, in Western society, we tend to think of time as linear.
Yes.
And she was like, in the Eastern world, like a lot of times they think of time as cyclical.
Yes.
And instead of thinking it as linear, you can think of it as like almost like a cone, like a cylinder of like you cycle back but you've gotten deeper, like you're going deeper and deeper. So you might feel like you've regressed, but actually you can be in a similar situation, but you can also have opportunities to see how you've grown and like approach it differently this time. If that makes sense. If you're willing to.
Yes.
So there's always the opportunity for growth, but I think it's comes from starting in the place of, again, like releasing yourself from any kind of guilt of feeling like, why do I feel this way again? I thought that I overcame this.
Totally.
And so that has really helped me too, to think of it as cyclical and not linear.
And everything is cyclical. Women, we're cyclical beings, right?
Yeah.
We cycle on anywhere from 24 to 32 days. Nature is cyclical. We cycle through the seasons, you know, so I think that's what's really helped me is to just know that I don't have to get to any end point. It's just really about continuing to evolve and learn and, work on myself. That's all I can do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I want to talk go a little bit deeper into the food thing because I think it's something that like there's so much information out there. And it can be overwhelming. Like literally I remember growing up, like, it's like, oh, don't eat fat. Fat is bad. And then I was like, okay. Oh no, now don't eat actually it's sugar that's bad. And now it's like keto where it's like eat a lot of fat. And then what's interesting is with SIBO, the things that actually like hurt my stomach are healthy food. So it's like, and vegan food is actually really bad for me. So I think it's interesting and I love kind of that you talk about intuitive eating, because everyone's bodies are different.
Yes.
So can you explain a little bit about intuitive eating and like what that is?
Yeah, so it's a pretty simple, I think people, you know, like they love using these these buzzwords, but it's a simple idea. You're just making peace with food. A lot of times people will label food as good or bad, which is what you're talking about, right? Fats are bad, carbs are good, or vice versa. And listening to your body and its cues. So what I like to do is, because I think it very much ties into emotional eating too. If for some reason you are craving like a piece of meat, I guess that's not a good example because meat could be good, but for me, I'm not a big meat eater. If you're craving like a hamburger, right? Taking a beat and saying, okay, is this what I really want? Or am I trying to feed myself because I don't want to feel something? Or do I really want this? And if the answer is yes, I do want this, then actually eating it and not feeling guilt about eating it, really enjoying it.
Yeah. And I think like you were saying, our bodies give us cues. So for me, and you would know a lot more about this than I do, but I've heard that like some people's, like according to your blood type, is that true about like some people need meat more than others because of your blood?
That's the first, I mean, yeah, possibly.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know enough about that.
Yeah. Well, so I was like reading why my body reacts so bad. I was trying to discover like why my body reacts so badly to like vegan and vegetarian food. And now I know a lot of it is because of like with the stomach thing, like I can't eat like legumes and like beans and a lot of things that are more vegan, vegetarian.
Yes.
But also there are times when like I legitimately crave meat. Like I feel like the red meat, like I need red meat like once a month or something.
Same.
And so I think like listening to your body.
Listening to the body and then going back to being aware, right? That's listening to your body. So that's, I think being aware is step one in anybody's health and wellness journey. Yeah. But also going back to the cycle. It's not just a coincidence that you want meat on like once a month, right?
Right.
It's probably during that phase of your cycle where you need the extra protein.
Yeah, it's so true.
You know?
And like, I think listening to, I used to be so scared of eating carbs. Like, I think a lot of women probably.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
But like 2 years ago, I was actually working in a restaurant and I was constantly moving and I was constantly like just having to like put, which is not healthy either, but I was having to quickly grab stuff. But I weirdly, like in that time, even though it was not necessarily like a healthy time for me, I was burning so many calories walking that I didn't care what I ate. And I genuinely started to just listen to my body. And then once I started eating that way, like I have been like the thinnest I've ever been after years of trying to like work out really, really hard and like diet. I don't know. We can talk about diets and meal plans and why they don't work. But it's so simple that it almost sounds like stupid. But like once I just stopped pushing my body to work out really, really hard. Like I still work out a lot, but I don't ignore when my body's saying me the cue of like, I'm really sore. I need to take a rest day and maybe do yoga instead of HIIT, things like that.
Yeah.
But why do you think, we kind of talked about it, but like, why do you think that diets and meal plans don't work?
A few different reasons. So one, I have an issue with diets because, there's marketing is so good, right? It makes it seem like so sexy and it's this like quick, easy fix, but nothing is a quick, easy fix. Right. And I think diets ultimately give people the control that they want, right? Yeah. They want to feel like they have control over the food that they're putting into their body. But if you actually did get the control from the food you're eating, it wouldn't be called a diet, right? It'd just be called eating. Yeah. And I don't think that the diets or the meal plans work because oftentimes diets restrict entire food groups, like keto. It restricts carbs, only has you eating fats. And then there's Atkins, which I think restricts fats, but then allows carbs. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's all of these different things. Our bodies aren't meant to be restricted. Our minds aren't meant to be restricted.
Yeah.
And our bodies are constantly changing every day. So to follow a meal plan, your meal plan doesn't change every day.
Yeah.
And for women especially, right, going back to the cycle, there's going to be certain times of the cycle where you don't need to eat that much, which is why you're not that hungry. But then other times of your cycle, like, you know, before your cycle starts or even on your cycle, you need more energy.
Yeah.
So you're going to need more food, but the meal plan does not reflect that change either.
Yeah, no, it's so important. And I love what you said about control too, because it's like really in all of this, what we're talking about is we're trying to get to a place of not controlling, but actually like freedom with our food.
Freedom and peace.
And I think I've talked to a lot of psychologists and therapists on this podcast, and like so much of anxiety disorders come from this need of like feeling like we need control, or things are so chaotic around us that like I'm going to control this, and if I can control this, then like everything's going to be okay. But actually that leads you down a rabbit hole of really not having freedom around food, especially.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can't control it.
Yeah.
Because then you control it for an extended period of time, and then what happens? You probably didn't eat enough, and then you go off and you binge.
Exactly.
So you're in this constant cycle of control, restrict, binge,
Right.
and it's never ending until you realize that this is much bigger than yourself, and really what you're wanting is just like peace and balance from within.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it makes sense why we emotionally eat then too, because it's, again, I'm trying to control how I'm feeling, like let me soothe this with some food or whatever. So I know you have a program where you go into all of this.
Yeah, so I have an online course, the Balanced Nutrition course. And so, you know, the first module I think is like really setting the foundation is what I call it. So that includes like generational eating and bioindividuality and crowding out and primary versus secondary foods. I think that's what you're referring to.
Yeah. Which I don't know what some of those things are. So I know like obviously the reason why you have a full course on this is because it's very like in depth. But if you could just give like a brief overview of what those things are.
Yeah. So starting with generational eating, again, I drill this in, just being aware and really going back to how you ate as a child, how your parents ate, how your grandparents ate, because our behavior is learned.
Yeah.
And typically what happens is you either eat the exact same way that your parents do or did, or you go in the complete opposite direction. So just being able to connect the dots between present and past, that gives you a little bit more clarity on how to push forward, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to make changes, or did you enjoy how you ate growing up and you want to continue that way? So taking note of that. And then what I also really like to ask my clients, if they don't have children, is like, would you feed your child self the food that you're eating now? And a lot of times it's no.
Yeah.
And if you do have children, would you want them to eat you know, the way that you're eating? How would you tell them to eat? That's the way that you want to be eating. And it's always like nourish your body with plenty of nutrient dense foods.
Right.
And then bioindividuality is all about you as a person and how your body is completely different than somebody else's body. That's why fad diets don't work.
Yeah.
And your body is constantly changing. So being able to tune in and figure out what you need for that specific day is going to set you up for success. Primary versus secondary food. Secondary food is anything that you put into your mouth. So whether that be food or drinks, supplements, vitamins, primary food is going to be everything else that feeds you. So your career, your relationships, your spirituality, movement. Right? So taking a much more holistic approach. And then crowding out, I really love this concept because there is so much pressure to restrict. Crowding out is more focusing on adding in. So adding in plenty of nutrient dense foods with the hopes that you kind of crowd out the unhealthy foods. So instead of saying, I'm not going to have bread, I'm going to try to eat as many vegetables and fruits today. And then, you fill yourself up on that you don't really want the bread anymore.
Yeah, that's great. Because I do think it's like a lot easier for us to think of like what we can have than like what you can't have. So I think I love that concept of crowding out. And I like what you said too about like everything that we feed ourselves, whether it be career or spirituality or whatever. Can you explain that link between like the mind body link and like how it kind of manifests in our diet too?
Totally. This is my issue with our current health system, right? We like to kind of, I don't know how to phrase this, but we don't look at the whole picture. We look at just your gut, for example, right? We're not thinking about how does it impact the entire body as a whole. Yeah. Your brain, your mind is on your body, and your body is still attached to your brain and your mind and your head, right? So I don't know why we try to make mental health separate from like physical health.
Right.
It's all together. Can you remind me of the question again?
Yeah, just kind of like that. Like I'm just so curious to talk about the link between our brains and our psychology and our body. I mean, even like part of the reason why this question came from is in my healing, like I was having a ton of headaches because of the accident, and I started going to acupuncture, and the acupuncturist was like, oh, like the part of your brain where you're having headaches is related to your stomach. Do you have stomach problems? And I'm like, oh yeah, like I have SIBO. And then it just was amazing to me how it was all interconnected. And so I think a lot of times, like you said, like people try to compartmentalize issues and like, oh, I just am gonna diet today, but they're not focusing on their mental health. And so yeah, I kind of just wanted to talk about that, how the two interconnect.
So I don't have like a big scientific answer for this, but I like to think about it in simple terms, right? So if somebody says to work out because you're going to increase your endorphins, right? That's an instant mind-body connection. Anytime you binge eat, for example, you end up feeling very terrible, and it affects your mental state. So it really does show you that everything you put into your body not only affects the body, it affects the brain and how you feel about yourself and your confidence level. Right. And anything that you're taking in energetically, with your relationships or whatnot, affects your eating as well. Yeah,
it totally makes sense. And I also saw in your program or on your website that you talk a lot about body types, which I just heard about this from my chiropractor. Because he was just like, and he's like, oh, this is your body type. So I'm the type where he said it's like a hummingbird. I don't know if that like tracks with you, but he said he explained like each body type in terms of like an animal. Okay. So I'm the hummingbird type. I don't know what it's called.
I don't know about animal body types, but so going back to cycles and nature and everything, I love looking towards nature for some answers. Yeah. So my belief is that our bodies are made up of all of the different elements, air, fire, water, ether, and there's typically an imbalance, right? Which is why we have certain symptoms, whether that's bloating or gas. And so there's 3 different body types, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, which is it stems from Ayurveda health, which is like the oldest health system out there. Yeah. But you can, based off of what your symptoms are mentally and physically, you're able to figure out why you're having certain symptoms and then how to either, adjust your self-care routines or adjust the foods that you're eating. So you were saying that you were having issues with vegan and vegetarian foods, and I'm curious if the foods that you were eating were raw, because a lot of times people will think like, I want to have a smoothie or a juice or a salad, but raw vegetables a lot of times cause like bloating and gas, and that's because there's an imbalance of air in the body. And so the way to balance that out is by eating more grounding, cooked foods, and that gets rid of the bloating and the gas. So figuring out what the symptoms are, and then you can go back to the body type and then figure out how you can naturally balance that with other types of foods. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And it is like, so I eat a ton of vegetables and fruit too. Like I found out that there's certain things within like a vegan diet where you're not allowed to eat meat, so you really pack it in with like beans and stuff. Yeah. Like my body does not do well with that, but I've been able to find out like what are the vegetables that make my stomach hurt, and like
Do they hurt when they're really cooked? Like that type of thing.
Yeah.
But it's like cauliflower. I cannot eat cauliflower.
Or broccoli, probably, right?
Well, weirdly, broccoli is okay for me.
Oh,
so that's why I'm
interesting.
like, honestly, going back to listening to your body and like, even with like the diet plan that my gastroenterologist gave me, he was like, so these are the things that would make your stomach not hurt that we recommend for people with SIBO. But it's like,
Drives me crazy.
literally instead of fruit, they say eat table sugar because it's like the simplest form of sugar. So it's easier for your digestive system to break it down. No. But then that creates other health problems like raising your blood sugar. They say instead of complex carbs of any type, just eat white bread. Like it's literally hilarious because
these are just like guidelines too, right?
Yeah.
But only you know what works for you. So for me to tell you only eat this or only eat that, I'm doing a disservice to you because I'm not in your body. I don't know how that feels.
Exactly. And that's what I think that's really important, what you just said, like only you know you. So we can even sit here and have this conversation about like how to get to a place of, you know, being at optimal health. But like at the end of the day, like you are your best guide in that. Like only you have the cues that will tell you what you need. And I think sometimes we like to overcomplicate it, but at the end of the day, getting educated with, you know, things like your amazing program but then really sitting down and like listening to yourself and creating that space. I think so much of why we get to this place where our bodies are screaming at us to listen with these health issues is because we don't give ourselves enough time and space to just listen. But our bodies will speak to us loud and clear if we listen.
They will speak loud and clear to you. And I always say, if you're having a symptom, there's a reason for that, right? And I think as a society, we kind of normalize not being able to go poop, having really painful periods or long periods, or not having a period at all, or having bloating and gas all the time. Like none of that is normal. Yeah. And we've normalized it. And so if something feels off, it's because it is off. Right. And just because something is labeled as healthy, it could very much still be poisonous to your body. Yeah. i.e. beans and cauliflower. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Doesn't work for you. Yeah. So why are you going to eat it? Because somebody told you to? I mean, they're not you. Exactly. You are your compass. So like just follow whatever it's telling you.
Yeah. And I love what you said about like not normalizing it and not just accepting that I have to feel like crap all the time. I think I've seen you post something like this on Instagram that I so related to, because I really was struggling with my energy levels and my fatigue, and I was eating really healthy and doing all the things that were supposed to work for me, but I was feeling like crap. And I don't know if it was related to the stomach problems or my stress levels or what, but I feel like I'm kind of just on the upward trajectory of it. But for so long, I was really struggling with fatigue. I know that you posted something about like when your blood sugar is off. Yeah. What is that?
So that's kind of the hard thing, right? Blood sugar, you either have a lot of people, I shouldn't say you usually, a lot of people have either these spikes in their blood sugar or these really big falls in their blood sugar, and that's because it's not being balanced, and it's hard to balance your blood sugar. So it's just, again, becoming very aware of how you're feeling. But that is like, I think, problem number one for a lot of people. They're just not eating foods that are giving them the energy that they need throughout the day. And a lot of times it's because they are trying to like lose weight, and so they're not eating enough food, or they're not eating the right foods. But as long as you're having a well-balanced meal, you should have enough energy to balance out your blood sugar.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also like the quality of food. I mean,
totally.
Even just it amazes me. My grandparents are from Europe, and so like I've gotten to go there a lot, and sometimes I'll eat food that is like quote unquote not healthy, like bread and stuff, but it's so pure. Like it's literally like baked that morning, and then you're walking all day, like things are not processed there. And I like lose weight when I go to Europe, even though I'm eating quote unquote more, because I think the processed food that we have in the US is just terrible.
I was texting my girlfriend about this on the way over here because she's been trying to find a non-dairy coffee creamer. Okay. I told her raw and grass-fed, but she was just in Europe and said she had no issue with milk. Yeah. Because, you know, everything over there is so pure, like you said.
Well, it's also interesting. This is a bit of a tangent, but like, I think we can also like train our bodies to be lactose intolerant. Like totally. I had no problem with dairy until I moved to LA. And then again, like the fad of like dairy free. And I was like, oh, I guess dairy's not good. So like, I'll just start having dairy free things. And now when I have dairy, I have a problem with it. And like my body could have very well changed. But before I started restricting dairy, my body actually was able to process it. And now my body's like, no, we don't do this anymore.
I would love to know though, how it is if it was raw, grass-fed, organic cheese or milk or whatever you're having.
Yeah. Which I'm sure would make a big difference.
Fine. Yeah. I know. All of these women that I know are like, oh, my kid, they're lactose intolerant. They can't have milk. And it's just like, no, you're just you're feeding them shitty milk.
Right, right. Or
spend a little bit more and get the better milk.
Yeah. Or also I think sometimes like when we coddle ourselves too much, which I think like just thinking even of how our parents grew up, like they didn't have like, I feel like they were more exposed to like germs and things like that, but their immunity, like they built up their immunity. I think sometimes if you restrict yourself too much, then your body doesn't like build up the things to process dairy or to fight off certain like germs and stuff. And so I think again, it kind of gets back to like not restricting yourself either, but when you do fill yourself up, doing it with like the organic, like good quality stuff.
Yeah, make sure this is your livelihood. You know, this is your life. So make sure you're giving yourself really good quality ingredients and meals.
Yeah. I know you work a lot with one-on-one clients. Like what are some trends that maybe you've noticed across them?
The one big thing is communication and needs. People not knowing what they actually need from their partner or their family member or their friends, and then not being able to communicate it because they're afraid of how someone might perceive what they say. Yeah. And so when they're able to say, okay, this is what I need from my husband or from my mom or from my child, and then I empower them to actually have those difficult conversations, everything else in their life starts to change. It's just, we use food to cope because we're afraid to feel the way that we're feeling. But when we actually handle the emotion, we can figure out what we need from that emotion and then communicate it to our support system. Like, I feel like the gates open up, right? Totally. And there's so much freedom. We're just afraid to address it. Yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone like enjoys confrontation or conflict, but I've found that every time that I've had to have a hard conversation with someone close, it actually like strengthens the relationship and helps the other person too, because they probably were feeling like they couldn't maybe communicate something with you. And Brene Brown, I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's amazing. She's amazing. I talk about her all the time. Like this podcast should just be a shrine to Brene Brown because I talk about her all the time. But she talks about how vulnerability is the thing that creates connection. Yes. And it takes vulnerability to communicate, this is what I need from you, or this is how I'm feeling. And it takes vulnerability with ourselves to be able to even recognize what it is that we need. And then there's another book I'm reading where it was really interesting to think of relationships in this way, but his name's Danny Silk, and he says that we're always either working towards connection or disconnection in our relationships. There's no in between. So if you're avoiding a conversation, then you're working towards disconnection. And that's why you hear stories of like marriages where like they haven't communicated in years because they've gotten to this place of like, I'm going to protect myself and like also maybe protect you from this like hard conversation. So I'm just not going to talk about it. But instead of working towards communication and connection by like having those hard conversations, they just let it fester, which then furthers the disconnection from each other and from ourselves. Yes. So, I'll take it a step further too. people also don't want to let other people feel how they're feeling.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean by that? You can have the conversation and you may feel better, but now somebody else on the other end has to process what you just had the conversation about.
Yeah.
So giving them the time and the space to feel how they're feeling and then coming back.
Yeah.
Like the conversation is the relationship, right? And knowing how to do that dance, I think, is so important with yourself.
Yeah.
And with everybody else in your life.
Yeah. And I think it's so important to get to that place with yourself first, because when you're okay and you're honest with yourself and then you have that conversation, you can allow that person the time and the space to process how they need to, even if it's not exactly how you want them to initially, and still be okay. Because if you haven't gotten to this place of being secure in like where you're at, then you're going to need something from the other, like some kind of validation from the other person. And then that's where I feel like it can blow up of like, well, you're not reacting the way I want you to right now. Yeah. But like knowing that you're okay, then like, I just think that in any relationship, whether you're dating or whatever, like anytime you're trying to fill a hole in yourself with that other person, it's just not going to be healthy. So I think learning how to communicate with ourselves first and like be okay with ourselves, then any relationship you're in is going to be so much healthier.
Totally.
Yeah.
And not making assumptions.
Yes. Oh my gosh. We can do a whole podcast about that.
Even the assumptions that you say to yourself, right? Those limiting beliefs, those limiting narratives that are constantly playing throughout your mind. That's why it always goes back to like, this is daily work that you have to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Really quick. I mean, I don't want to go on a tangent too much, but limiting beliefs is something that I've been examining a lot in my life. What are some ways that you work with your clients to kind of identify those limiting beliefs and get over them?
So I actually have a group program on this.
Oh, that's amazing.
Called Limitless.
Okay.
And it's all about limiting beliefs and rewriting your narrative.
Oh, wow.
And the biggest, one of the biggest tools, other than journaling, because I am a huge fan of journaling, which I was never. I used to hate journaling. But other than journaling and breath work and all of those other things, the quickest thing that you can do for yourself is anytime a thought pops into your head, ask yourself, is this fear or fact?
That's so powerful.
They're probably fears. And if they are fears, saying, okay, this is a fear. Do I know this to be true about myself? And if it's a no, because it's probably a no, how can you move forward? How can you put one foot in front of the other? Because that's really what holds us back from doing what we want to do and having that ideal life that we're really looking for. Yeah,
that's so powerful. Because I feel like the times even when I've started to get into like an anxiety spiral, it's because I've let fear take over, and then I'm like, okay, like I need to control this fear. So like, I'm going to do this thing to like overcome it. And then it's just like this anxiety spiral. And then when you can stop and be like, you said, is this true? You know, and
fear fact,
that's great.
Yeah.
Well, we covered a lot today.
I know.
If there's like one thing that you could leave people with, and I know this is tough to just distill it to one thing, but what would that one thing be?
So many things.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing for myself and for my clients is to know that everything that you need and everything that you want is already within you. It's just a matter of tuning in and listening to yourself and trusting yourself. Nobody knows what you need except for you.
Yeah. That is the perfect way to wrap up everything we just said. Well, thank you so much for joining. How can people connect with you and get plugged into all the great resources that you have?
Yeah, so I'm very active on Instagram, so you can look up my Instagram at HealthSpaceCA, as in California, at HealthSpace on Instagram, and then, at HealthSpaceCA on Instagram, and then my website, health-space.com.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll add all that in the episode notes too.
Perfect.
Well, thanks again.
Thank you. This is so fun.
I know. I'm loving being, like I said, I took a long hiatus. I was like, this could go one of two ways, but
it was great.
I had a lot of fun.
Never known.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for listening. I'll see you next week.